The Unfinished Measure. Chapter 1. January, and the yarn is cornflower blue. The colour was wrong from the beginning. I knew it even then, standing in the little wool shop on Clement Street, holding the skein up to the winter light coming through the smudged window. Tilting it left and right the way you tilt a coin you're not sure is real. The woman behind the counter, a stout person with reading glasses on a beaded chain, told me it was cornflower. She said the word with some authority, as though cornflower were a fixed and final thing not subject to argument. I bought 4 skeins. Enough for a child's sweater, she said, sizing me up not unkindly, the way shopkeepers do when you are a woman of a certain age, buying children's yarn without a child in tow. I didn't explain myself. You rarely do at 62 in a wool shop in January, when the explanation would take longer than the transaction and would only leave everyone feeling strange. My name is Nora. I live alone in the house where I raised my son, Finn. The house is too large for one person, but I have made my peace with its size, the way you make peace with a difficult relative through long acquaintance, deliberate effort, and a certain numbness in the extremities. The upstairs rooms hold boxes I haven't opened since Finn left for Edinburgh. Not because the boxes contain anything painful, but because they contain things that are simply his. And I have not decided yet what category of object his falls under when he is alive, and well and merely far away. I started the sweater on a Tuesday. The pattern was simple enough, a yoke construction, raglan sleeves, the kind of thing you can do while watching television or listening to the radio or sitting by a window. In early January, watching the street below go about its ordinary business. I had done more complicated things in my life. I had raised a child by myself after my husband. Julian died quickly and without warning when Finn was 9 years old. I had managed an accounts department for 23 years. I had learned in my 50s to change a fuse and unclog a drain and identify the specific sound a boiler makes when it is about to give up entirely. A raglan sweater was, by comparison, a minor undertaking. Still, I cast on 60 stitches and began. The needles made their small ticking sound. Outside it started to rain. I was not, at that point, aware that I was waiting for anything. I want to be honest about that. I did not sit down with the yarn in January, thinking I will knit until there is a grandchild to measure this against. That thought came later, sideways, in the manner of thoughts that are true but inconvenient. In January, I was only a woman beginning a project on a rainy Tuesday, which is one of the most ordinary things a person can do, and which felt at the time like enough. Chapter 2. The pattern repeated. There is something I should tell you about Finn. He is 34 years old and he lives in Edinburgh with a woman named Jenny, whom I have met precisely 4 times and who has, each of those 4 times, seemed on the verge of saying something important and then thought better of it. She is Danish originally. She makes furniture. Actual furniture. Beautiful, uncomfortable chairs with joints so precise. You'd swear they were grown rather than built. She is, I think, a serious person. I mean that as the highest possible compliment. Finn and Jenny have been together for 6 years. Before Jenny, there was a woman named Jade, and before Jade, there was a period of time I choose not to examine too closely when Finn was 27 and made a series of decisions that seemed, from a distance, designed to test the tensile strength of a mother's equanimity. He came through it. They always come through it if you let them. The sweater reached the body by March. I was perhaps a third of the way through when Finn called on a Sunday. He calls on Sundays reliably, which is a gift I have never directly acknowledged, because to acknowledge it would be to risk making it self-conscious and said in the overly casual voice he uses. When he is not being casual at all, Jenny and I have been talking about things, about the future, about what we want. I held the phone with one hand and the needles with the other, and I listened to my son talk about what he and Jenny wanted for their future, in the measured, abstract language people use when they are trying not to make a promise they might not be able to keep. He said eventually quite a lot. He said, "We're not sure yet," several times. He said, "It's complicated, Mum, you know how it is." As though I did know, as though complication were a place we had both visited and could reference easily. "I know," I said. "Take your time." After I hung up, I sat for a long while holding the half-finished body of the sweater in my lap, feeling the weight of the yarn, which is a real and physical weight. People don't appreciate that about knitting, that it has actual mass, that what you are doing is accumulating something. The cornflower blue had shifted in the lamplight into something that looked, now, more like dusk than flower. I thought about sizing. I thought about the difference between 12 months and 18 months, and 24 months, which in knitting terms is a world entire. Circumferences and lengths that feel almost trivial written down, but which determine whether a garment fits or hangs off a body, like a small, embarrassing tent. I had been knitting in a size I could only call approximate. Optimistic, perhaps. Presumptuous, even. I kept going. The sweater was finished by May, properly finished, cast off, ends, woven in, blocked flat on the bed in the spare room, and pinned to the measurements I had by then, more or less committed, to without entirely admitting I had committed to anything. It was a pretty little thing. Cornflower blue, soft enough to hold against your cheek with a small, textured yoke that had cost me 3 attempts, and one evening of quiet profanity to get right. I looked at it for a day and a half. Then I unpicked it. I started at the cast-off edge and worked backwards, which is not, technically, how you unravel a knitted garment. You're supposed to pull from the opposite end, but I did it the slow way deliberately, row by row, because the slow way felt necessary. Like a process, like acknowledgement. The yarn curled and kinked as it came undone, holding the memory of its former shape, the way hair does after it's been braided. And I wound it into a ball and put it in the wicker basket by the armchair, and sat looking at it for a while before I picked up the needles again. Cast on 60 stitches. Begin. Chapter 3. What knitting is for. People ask me sometimes why I knit. I have given many answers over the years, depending on who is asking and what they are actually asking for. To Moira at the community centre, who knits herself and would understand the technical answer, I have talked about the pleasure of making something that begins as a mathematical abstraction and becomes, through a series of small, repeated gestures, a physical object with warmth and weight. To my friend Stella, who is an architect and has very little patience for what she calls the pastoral feminine, I have said that it is satisfying to produce a finished thing. a thing with edges in a life that is otherwise largely made up of processes without conclusions. To the man at a dinner party, who asked with the faint condescension of someone who has never needed an occupation for his hands. "But isn't it rather a lot of sitting around?" I said. "Yes, it is exactly that, and I recommend it. But these are all partial answers. They are true as far as they go, the way a photograph of a room is true, accurately representing the surfaces, without capturing the quality of the light, or the smell of the air, or the particular silence that settles after everyone has left. The fuller answer has to do with time, and I have not given it to anyone, because it sounds, when I rehearse it in my head, like the kind of thing a person says when they are admitting to something. Here it is, knitting is a way of spending time. That does not feel like spending it. It feels instead like holding it, like keeping the hours cupped in your palms, rather than letting them run through. When you are sitting with your hands occupied and your mind partly engaged, and partly free, time does not accumulate behind you as loss. It accumulates in front of you as work. There is a difference. The difference is everything. I am 62 years old. My husband has been dead for 25 years. My son lives in another country. The house is too large. In the evenings, after dinner, the quietness of it is not unpleasant. Exactly, I have made my peace, as I said, but it is present. It has texture. It sits with you. Knitting gives the quietness something to do. By the second year, I was on my third attempt at the sweater. I had changed the colour. I found the cornflower blue after several months of looking at it. Too hopeful, I switched to a soft grey-green that seemed to me more honest, and which Stella, when she saw it, said, looked like the sea on a Tuesday, which I took as a compliment. I had also, between the first and second unravellings, spent some time looking up on the internet the developmental stages of infants, paying particular attention to the sections on growth and measurement. I had made notes. I had, without quite deciding to, begun to understand the problem with specificity. The problem was this: a sweater sized for a 12-month-old will not fit an 18-month-old. A sweater sized for an 18-month-old will look cavernous on a newborn. And a newborn, by definition, is not someone you can ask in advance to keep still while you take their measurements. You can only guess. You can only plan for a size that does not yet exist, a weight and length and circumference that will be determined by genetics and chance, and the particular timing of things over which you have absolutely no control. I understood that I was planning for a particular size. I understood slowly and then all at once that the size I was planning for would only become knowable at a specific moment. Not eventually, not in due course, but then, precisely then, when there was a person in the world to measure. I put the needles down one evening in October and sat for a long time in the armchair watching the rain against the dark window. Then I picked them up again. The sweater is a project, I told myself, a long-term project. Plenty of worthwhile things are long-term projects. Chapter 4. Jenny. It was Jenny who called, in the end, not Finn Jenny. On a Wednesday in the third year of the sweater, on a rainy afternoon in November, when I was sitting with the grey-green yarn and a cup of tea that had gone cold, listening to the radio with half my attention and the window with the other half, my phone lit up with Jenny's name, which it had done only twice before. Once when Finn had left his phone on a train and needed me to know he was alive. And once when she had sent me a photograph of a chair she had made that she thought I might like. I did. I told her so. She seemed pleased in the measured way she has of showing pleasure, which is like watching someone carefully open a present they have wanted for a long time. Nora, she said, I wanted to tell you myself. A pause, a very short pause that lasted, I think, approximately forever. We're pregnant. Very early, we're not telling people yet, but I wanted you to know. I set down my tea. I set down the needles. I looked at my hands for a moment, the way you look at your hands when you need them to be still. Jenny, I said. That is, and here I stopped, because the word I had been about to use was wonderful, which is true but insufficient. That is very good news. I'm very, very glad. We talked for 20 minutes. She was cautious, in the way of someone who has perhaps been cautious before about this particular thing. And I was careful to match her caution, to not run ahead of what she was offering, to hold the news at exactly the size she needed it held. She told me the due date. She said Finn was beside himself and then said it again in Danish, which she occasionally does when she is moved, and which I find among the most touching things about her. She asked how I was. I said I am well. I am sitting with my knitting. She laughed, a brief, warm sound. She said, Finn told me you always have something on the needles. I said yes. I suppose I always do. After we hung up, I sat without moving for a while. Then I looked at the sweater in my lap third attempt. 14 inches completed, a pleasant ripple of moss, stitch running along the yoke. And I felt, for the first time in 3 years, that I knew exactly what size to make it. I did not pick up the needles straight away. I unraveled it first. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds counterintuitive, possibly irrational. Stella, when I told her later, said Nora, for God's sake, in the tone she reserves for decisions she finds baffling, but is too fond of me to call stupid. But it was not irrational. It was, I think, necessary, because the sweater I had been making the 3 years of it, the 4 different colorways I had tried and rejected, the adjustments to the yoke and the tweaks to the sleeve length, and the long evenings of moss stitch. While the radio murmured and the street outside darkened, that sweater was not the right sweater. It was the waiting sweater. It was the sweater made in the absence of information, in the particular tension of not knowing when or whether, in the patient, slightly aching posture of a woman who is keeping herself occupied by making and unmaking the same thing over and over. Because making and unmaking is at least something to do with your hands, while time passes and the world gets on with its own inscrutable business. That sweater was done. It had served its purpose, which was never exactly to be a sweater. Now I needed to make the actual one. I wound the yarn into a ball. I put it in the basket. I sat for a moment with my hands in my lap and the quietness of the house around me, and it was, for the first time in a long time, a different kind of quiet. Not the absence quiet I had grown so accustomed to, the quiet of a house that is too large for one person, the quiet that sits with you in the evenings and has texture and presence. This was, I'm not sure I can describe it correctly. It was more like the quiet before something rather than the quiet after. The quiet that belongs to the space between the moment you learn a piece of news and the moment you fully understand what it means. A waiting quiet, but a different kind of waiting. I made dinner. I called Finn that evening, even though it wasn't Sunday, and he answered on the second ring, and I could hear in his voice the same quality I imagine was in mine, something careful and bright, something held with both hands. We talked for an hour. He told me Jenny had wanted me to know first. I said I was honoured. He said she likes you, Mum. She likes you quite a lot. I said I like her quite a lot too. He said, yeah, I know. I can tell. That night, before bed, I looked up the measurements for a 6-month size and a 12-month size, and I wrote them both down on a piece of paper and put the paper in the wicker basket with the yarn. Then I went to sleep and dreamed, unusually, of colour not cornflower blue or grey-green or any of the colours I had tried before, but a warm, particular yellow. The yellow of early morning light on white walls, uncomplicated and exact. Chapter 5. The actual sweater. The baby was born on a Thursday in April at 4:47 in the morning. Finn called me from the hospital whispering, which struck me as the right instinct. Whispering when something enormous has happened, as though the enormousness requires a certain quiet to contain it. He said, "She's here, Mum. She's here and she's perfect, and Jenny is incredible." He said it was a girl. He said they were calling her Eva. He said, and here his voice changed in a way I had never heard it change before, a way that made my throat close briefly. "She's so small, Mum. She's so incredibly small." I sat on the edge of my bed in the pre-dawn dark in my dressing gown, holding the phone, and I said, "She is. They are. It gets less frightening." "And then you did it, love." And he said Jenny did it. I held her hand. I said, "That's most of it, actually." And he said, Yeah, I think maybe it is." I flew to Edinburgh 10 days later. I brought the sweater in my carry-on, finished the night before. Needles tucked into my check-in luggage, pattern notes folded into the pocket of my coat, yarn ends woven in with a care that felt, under the circumstances, like a kind of ceremony. It was yellow. The warm morning light yellow I had dreamed of in November, a colour called butter by the manufacturer, which seems almost too simple a name for something that had taken so long to arrive at. The yoke had a small pattern of travelling stitches, nothing elaborate, just a movement. A slight ripple, a rhythm like breathing, like a small steady pulse. Finn met me at the airport. He looked, as people always look after a new baby, as though he had not slept in 10 days and had never been happier in his life, which I suppose is true. Jenny was on the sofa when we arrived, upright and composed, with Eva in the crook of her arm, and she looked up when I came in and something crossed her face that I can only describe as relief, which surprised me and moved me more than I can say. We did not hug immediately. We are not, as a family, people who hug immediately, but she reached out and took my hand for a moment, and I held it, and that was, I think, as much as either of us needed. Then she held up Eva, and I sat down next to her and I looked. She was small. Of course she was small. Finn had said it, and I had said it back to him. And I had known it theoretically in the way you always know things theoretically. But knowing and seeing are not the same process, not even remotely. She had a round, serious face and her father's exact colouring. The slightly startled look all newborns have, as though the world is considerably more lit and complicated than they had been led to expect. Her hands were extraordinary. The nails, I thought, absurdly. the tiny perfect nails. I held her for a long time while Finn made tea and Jenny, carefully and with evident relief, stretched her legs along the sofa cushions and closed her eyes. After a while, I reached into my bag and took out the sweater. "I made this for her," I said, though only Jenny was technically awake to hear it, and she might have been half asleep. "It took a while. I got the size wrong a few times." Jenny opened one eye. She looked at the sweater. She was quiet for a moment. "It's beautiful," she said, sleepy, sincere. "Thank you." I held it up against Ava, who ignored it entirely, being occupied with more pressing matters. The specific quality of the light through the window, the sound of kettle water, the general strangeness of having a body at all, the sweater was the right size. Not immediately. She would grow into it over the coming months, fill out the chest and the arms, make the yellow her own through spilt milk, and afternoon sunlight and the particular rumpling that happens when a garment is worn by someone who loves it without knowing they love it yet. But it was right. It would fit when she was ready for it. I set it in Jenny's lap. Jenny touched it once lightly with one finger, the way she does with things she finds beautiful carefully, as though beauty is a thing you can accidentally disturb. Finn brought the tea. We sat in the Edinburgh morning, the four of us, and the light came in through the high windows and lay in long, warm blocks across the floor. And outside the city went about its business buses and pigeons, and the distant percussion of someone's scaffolding, the whole ordinary ongoing world. And Eva slept in my arms with the specific authority of someone who has no idea yet what an extraordinary thing it is to be new. I have since started something else. Another project in the wicker basket, a small, complicated thing, begun with no particular hurry, in no fixed size, at no appointed time. A different shade of yellow, warmer. The needles make their small ticking sound in the evenings. And the house is too large and the quietness is present, and I hold the hours in my palms and they accumulate slowly as work. I am not waiting exactly, but I am perhaps making room. Which is, I think, much the same thing.